The twin suns of the planet Oralis dipped low behind jagged crystal mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet. The human colony ship, Horizon, hovered above the surface, its engines humming softly. Commander Elara Dane stood, on the observation deck, her eyes fixed on the alien landscape. She had seen many planets before, but Oralis was different. Its air was thick yet breathable. The ground glowed faintly beneath her feet, and strange plants swayed as if alive, though no wind touched them. Elara had been assigned to lead the first human settlement here. Her team consisted of engineers, scientists, and explorers, each trained to adapt to new worlds. Humanity had expanded far beyond Earth, yet the thrill of discovery never faded. Yet despite her excitement, a sense of unease lingered. This planet was not empty. Through the hull's transparent walls, she saw movement among the crystal forests. At first she thought it was the wind, but then shapes emerged. Tall, slender beings with glimmering skin that shifted colors like liquid metal. Their faces were serene, their movements deliberate, and most striking of all, they had no mouths that spoke, at least none humans could recognize. "Commander Dane," said Lieutenant Ravi, her second in command, his voice breaking her focus. "Sensors detect life forms approaching the landing site. They're intelligent by the readings." Elara nodded. "Keep the scanners active. Maintain a safe distance. We don't know their intentions." The beings moved closer, their steps silent on the glowing ground. They stopped just at the edge of the landing zone. One figure, slightly taller and more radiant than the rest, stepped forward. Its eyes, large and reflective, seemed to look straight into Elara's mind. There was a calm authority in its presence. Elara swallowed. "I want a peaceful approach," she said softly. "We need to show we mean no harm." A small team of humans suited up and descended to the surface, careful not to make sudden movements. Elara led, her hand raised in a gesture of greeting. The tall being mirrored her stance, though it did not speak. Instead, it tilted its head slightly, a motion that somehow felt like acknowledgement. Elara realized that communication here would not be like on any other planet. These beings did not rely on words. They relied on something deeper. Ravi whispered, "Commander, it's like they're reading us, understanding without words." Elara nodded. "Then we must be careful what we show. Every action counts." The human team slowly approached, leaving space between themselves and the alien. The being, whom Elara instinctively named Kale in her mind, extended a hand, not aggressively, but as an offering. Elara mirrored the gesture. Their fingers almost touched, and for a moment, it felt as if the universe had paused. A low hum filled the air, faint but tangible, as if the planet itself acknowledged the moment. Kale's form shimmered softly, and Elara felt a wave of calm wash over her. Words could not capture it, but somehow she understood. Kale meant no harm. Days passed, and the humans began establishing the colony. The aliens observed quietly, staying, at a distance but always watching. Kyle appeared frequently, silently helping humans when needed. One morning he lifted a fallen beam from a collapsed shelter, allowing workers to escape safely. Another time he guided a lost rover through the crystal forest, saving valuable equipment. Elara noticed these acts but found herself frustrated. Communication was nearly impossible. They could not speak. They could not write. Yet somehow, Kyle conveyed understanding. She spent hours trying to interpret his gestures, his tilts, and the subtle glow of his skin. Each motion seemed deliberate, meaningful, but the language was entirely foreign. One evening, after a long day of work, Elara sat by a small stream that ran near the settlement. The water reflected the twin suns like molten gold. Kale appeared, silently beside her. She did not startle. Over time, his presence had become familiar. "You help humans," she said aloud, more to herself than him. "Why?" Kale remained still. Then he reached into the water, scooping up a glowing stone. He handed it to her without a word. Ilara turned it over in her hand. It pulsed faintly, warm, almost alive. I think you want us to understand something, she murmured. She looked at him, studying his eyes, his movements. There was no fear, only curiosity and a quiet strength. Somehow she felt a connection forming, despite the lack of words. That night, Ilara recorded her observations. Kyle exhibits intelligence beyond instinct. He observes, he anticipates, he aids without instruction. Humans can learn from him, and perhaps he can learn from us. Communication may not require speech, it requires trust. Trust, however, was fragile. Some colonists were uneasy, calling the aliens ghosts or specters, fearful of the unknown. Ilara intervened whenever panic arose, explaining the importance of patience and observation. She believed in humanity's ability to adapt, to understand, and to empathize, even across species. A week later, a storm unlike any Earth had known swept across Oralis. Dark clouds roiled, crackling with blue energy, and winds whipped across the colony. The humans struggled to secure equipment, but the alien influence was clear. Kale moved among them silently, guiding, warning, and protecting. A falling tree struck a structure, and a human worker froze in fear. Kyle appeared, placing a hand on the human's shoulder. The man's eyes widened, then comprehension and courage replaced fear. With Kale's subtle guidance, he lifted the HFY beam safely. After the storm passed, Ilara walked among the survivors. She saw gratitude, awe, and relief. Then she saw Kale, standing apart, watching her. She felt the strange, wordless conversation between them. Something unspoken passed, a mutual recognition that they were not alone, that trust had begun to form. Ilara smiled faintly. "You don't speak many words," she said softly, "but I think you'll never leave us." Kyle tilted his head, and for a moment, she imagined he smiled too. The colony began to grow. Humans built shelters, laboratories, and small farms. Kale and his people observed but gradually became part of the rhythm. They were never intrusive, never demanding, yet always present. Ilara realized that their silence was not emptiness. It was patience, thought, and understanding. By the end of the first month, the bond between humans and Lyrians, especially Kale, had begun to solidify. Ilara often caught him watching her, not with judgment, but with curiosity. She returned the gaze, silently acknowledging their unspoken connection. One evening, standing on a ridge overlooking the glowing city of human lights against Oralis's crystal mountains, Ilara reflected on the lessons she had learned. Humanity thrived not because of advanced technology alone, but because of courage, empathy, and the willingness to bridge gaps others feared to cross. Kale represented all that humanity could aspire to in a partner: intelligent, loyal, and understanding beyond words. As twin suns set for the second time that week, Ilara spoke softly, more to herself than anyone else. "We came seeking a new world, but perhaps we found new friends instead." Kyle appeared silently at her side, and together they watched the horizon. Neither spoke, yet the understanding between them was profound. The first chapter of their shared journey had begun, quiet yet powerful, built on trust, action, and the promise of a connection that words could never fully capture. Humanity had arrived on Oralis, but in Kyle, they found a mirror of their own strength, the courage to reach out, the patience to understand, and the heart to stay, no matter what challenges lay ahead. And though the world was still unknown and full of danger, one thing was clear: the humans and the silent beings of Oralis would face it together. The colony on Oralis had begun to settle into a rhythm. Human structures rose amid the glowing crystal forests, and the settlers learned to navigate the strange landscape. Life was hard, but manageable, and throughout it all, Kale remained a quiet presence, always near, always observing. "Commander," Ilara Dane often found herself reflecting on him. Despite his silence, Kale communicated more than some humans she had known. His gestures were precise, deliberate, and full of meaning. He guided humans in small ways, showing safe paths through crystal thickets, warning of unstable ground, and even helping repair equipment with surprising skill. One morning, Ilara stood near the newly constructed water reclamation center. Sparks flew from a damaged panel, and a young engineer froze in panic. Kyle appeared silently, moving toward the hazard. Without a word, he lifted the panel carefully, showing the engineer how to secure it. The man nodded, understanding Kale's intent, and quickly followed the silent instructions. Ilara approached, her curiosity piqued. "Kale," she said softly, "how do you understand so quickly? How do you see what we need without words?" Kale did not respond. Instead, he pointed toward the flowing water and then to the sky, tilting his head. Slowly, Ilara realized he wanted her to observe, not just act. He wanted her to notice patterns, how the water flowed, how the crystals reflected light, and how the environment reacted to humans. It was a lesson in attention, in perception, in understanding the world around them. Over the next days, Ilara began practicing Kale's method. She moved more deliberately, watched more carefully, and listened to the subtle cues of the land. She started noticing patterns she had missed before, how crystal plants leaned toward sunlight, how certain ground areas emitted faint heat, and how the storms of Oralis moved unpredictably, yet with rhythm. Her team noticed the change. Humans began to adopt her cautious, observant approach, and the colony had grown stronger with each passing week. Humans and the silent beings, especially Kale, had developed an understanding that required no words. Humans were learning the patience and perception of the Lyrians, and in return, Kale seemed to admire human creativity and determination. But peace is often fleeting. One morning, the sensors on Horizon picked up unusual readings far beyond the crystal forests. Massive ships, unlike any humans had encountered before, moved toward Oralis at high speed. Their dark, angular designs glinted in the twin suns' light. Ilara watched the images on the display, her heart tightening. "Commander Dane." "Ravi," said, his voice tense, "we're detecting multiple life signs on those ships. Alien, unknown. They're approaching fast, and they're armed." Ilara's jaw tightened. "Prepare the defenses, alert the colony, but above all, stay calm. We don't know their intentions yet." Kyle stood nearby, observing. His eyes followed the incoming ships with an intensity that made even seasoned humans uneasy. He did not panic. He never panicked. It was as if he could sense the danger more clearly than anyone else. The aliens soon revealed themselves. The Varkans, a ruthless species known in scattered records for conquering and consuming planets. Their ships descended into the skies of Oralis, weapons gleaming, scanning for targets. The humans had no illusions. The Varkans would not hesitate to attack. Ilara called the colony together. "We have to defend our home," she said firmly. "But we're not alone. Kale and his people will help us. We've learned to trust them, and now we must act together." Kyle moved forward, silently coordinating with the humans. He touched panels, pointed to strategic positions, and guided them to higher ground. Every gesture had a purpose, every movement precise. The humans followed instinctively, trusting in his knowledge and timing. The first attack came at dusk. Varkan, ships fired beams that cut through the crystal forests, shattering structures and setting fires. Humans took cover, firing defensive weapons, but the Varkans were relentless. Amid the chaos, Kale moved through the battlefield like a shadow, lifting falling debris, shielding humans, and directing the colony's defenses. Ilara realized that Kale was more than a guide. He was a strategist. Even without words, he coordinated the humans' movements with unmatched skill. She watched as he raised a hand, and the humans understood instinctively to take defensive positions behind crystal formations. A Varkan projectile slammed into the ground where they had been moments earlier, confirming Kale's silent command had saved lives. During the battle, Ravi shouted over the comms, "Commander, we can't hold them, they're too strong." Alara shook her head. We don't retreat, we adapt. Watch Kale, follow his lead. Kale moved to a ridge overlooking the battlefield. He pointed toward clusters of crystals indicating weak points. In the Varkon formation, Alara saw the opportunity. Target those positions, she ordered. Use the terrain to our advantage. Humans fired, hitting the weak points with precision. Varkon ships faltered, their formation disrupted. Kyle's presence gave the humans a confidence they hadn't known before. Every time a soldier hesitated, Kale appeared beside them, guiding their hands, steadying their aim, and silently encouraging courage. Despite the chaos, a remarkable pattern emerged. The humans fought not just with weapons but with determination, creativity, and teamwork. They improvised traps, coordinated attacks, and defended civilians with bravery that even Kale seemed to admire. Hours passed. The Varkons had not expected such resistance. The humans' adaptability and Kale's guidance forced them to retreat temporarily. Though battered, the colony had survived the first assault. Alara stood on the ridge, looking over the battlefield. Fires burned in the distance and the cries of the injured reached her ears. But the humans were alive, and that was what mattered. Kyle stood silently beside her. His skin shimmered faintly, as if acknowledging the human's success. You saved many, Alara said softly. She did not expect a response, but her words were more than just observation. They were gratitude. Kale tilted his head slightly. It was not speech, but it carried meaning. He had witnessed humanity's courage, firsthand, and in return, humanity had begun to understand his silent strength. The night brought uneasy calm. Humans and Lyrians worked together to repair structures and care for the wounded. Alara noticed how Kale moved among the injured, guiding them to safety, offering silent comfort, and preventing panic. It was a language beyond words, an understanding, rooted in action and empathy. Ravi approached her quietly. Commander, I think Kyle isn't just helping us survive. He's showing us what humanity could be like if we always acted with courage and care. Alara nodded. Yes, and he's teaching us that strength isn't just power. It's awareness, empathy, and persistence. We adapt, we survive, and we grow. That's what makes humans human. The following day, the colony began fortifying its defenses. Humans and Lyrians moved as one. Kyle guided placement of energy shields, the positioning of weapons, and the evacuation routes for civilians. Every instruction was silent, yet everyone understood. Alara spent time with Kale, observing his methods. He never gave direct orders. Instead, he led by example, showing, doing, and letting others follow. She realized that his way of communication was not a limitation, but a strength. Humans often wasted words, arguing or hesitating, while Kyle acted decisively and the results spoke louder than any speech. During one patrol, a group of young engineers got trapped near the edge of a crystal cliff. The ground shifted beneath them, threatening a deadly fall. Panic spread quickly. Alara's heart raced, but Kyle appeared without sound, positioning himself to stabilize the rocks and guiding the humans' hands. Step by step, they were rescued, shaken but unharmed. Alara knelt beside one young engineer afterward. See that, she said. That's courage, that's trust, and that's what we can be when we work together. As night fell again, the humans gathered near the central settlement. The twin moons of Oralis reflected off the crystal forests, creating a luminous, serene landscape so different from the chaos of battle. Kyle appeared, standing apart but always near, his presence reassuring. Alara looked at him. We faced a threat today, one I feared we might not survive. But we did, together. You've taught us that sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Kale's eyes shimmered, his skin reflecting faint light, as if he understood completely. No words were needed. The message was clear. Unity, courage, and trust could overcome even the most dangerous threats. That night, Alara recorded in her log, Today, humanity faced an enemy unlike any before. Yet through courage, empathy, and the guidance of an alien ally, We survived. Kale demonstrates that true strength lies not in aggression, but in understanding, action, and unwavering commitment to protect others. We may be different, but together, we are stronger. The humans slept uneasily, knowing the Varkans might return. But Kale stayed near, silent and watchful. Even the youngest children of the colony felt a strange sense of safety in his presence. Ilara walked alone to the edge of the settlement. The twin moons shone bright, reflecting on the crystal plains. She thought of Kale, of the humans' resilience, and of the bond forming between species. Words would never capture the depth of their connection, but actions already had. "Kyle," she whispered, "we may face more threats, more battles. But I know now, we will face them together. We will endure." Kale tilted his head once more, his gaze steady, and then slowly he turned to watch the horizon. Ilara knew the message was clear. He would stand with humanity no matter the danger. In the silent bond between human and alien, a powerful truth emerged. Courage, trust, and empathy were universal. They transcended speech, culture, and species. And with these qualities, even against a fearsome enemy like the Varkans, humans and their silent allies had a chance to survive and thrive. The colony of Auralis had faced its first real test. They had endured, they had adapted, and they had grown stronger, guided not by words but by trust, action, and the unspoken understanding that they were not alone. The Varkans would return, of course, but the humans would be ready, and Kale would be there, silently leading, protecting, and teaching. Humanity had found a powerful ally in the quietest of teachers, and in turn, Kyle had discovered something new about humans, a strength of heart that could not be measured by weapons, numbers, or speech alone. Together, they were no longer just settlers, they were guardians, and Auralis was their home. The battle with the Varkans had left the colony battered but alive. Fires had been extinguished, wounded humans and Lyrians were cared for, and the shattered structures slowly began to be repaired. Yet the threat of another attack lingered in the air like a storm waiting to strike. Commander Ilara Dane walked through the central settlement early one morning, inspecting repairs and speaking to her team. Her eyes scanned every detail: the alignment of energy shields, the placement of defensive turrets, the safety of supply routes. Every precaution mattered. Every decision mattered. Kyle followed silently, gliding beside her as if part of the inspection team. His presence was steady and reassuring. Humans had grown used to his silent guidance, but Ilara noticed something new. Kale was observing not just the terrain and structures, but the humans themselves. His gaze lingered on their courage, their determination, and the small ways they looked out for one another. As they reached the eastern ridge, weeks had passed since the first Varkan attack, and the colony on Auralis had grown stronger. Humans and Lyrians moved in quiet harmony, guided by understanding and trust. Kale's presence had become more than protective. He had become a teacher, a guide, and, for Ilara, a silent companion whose actions spoke louder than words. The morning was bright, the twin suns reflecting off the crystal forests. Ilara was inspecting a new defensive barrier along the colony's edge when a sudden alarm rang. Scouts had discovered a dangerous fissure widening near a critical supply hub. The fissure threatened to collapse entirely, cutting off water and food transport. "Ilara," Ravi said urgently, "we need to secure it immediately. This could jeopardize the colony if it fails." Ilara nodded. "Gather a response team. Kale, lead the way." Kale stepped forward silently, his skin shimmering faintly in the sunlight. He moved toward the fissure with precise confidence. Ilara followed, along with a team of engineers and security personnel. As they approached, the ground trembled subtly beneath their feet, warning of unstable terrain. Kyle indicated the safest path with careful gestures, guiding the humans along a narrow ridge above the fissure. One misstep would have meant a deadly fall, but Kale's movements were deliberate, his knowledge of the land exact. The humans followed without hesitation, trusting his guidance. Halfway through the journey, a massive crystal slab began to shift, dangerously above the team. A young engineer froze in panic, unable to move. Without a sound, Kale moved swiftly, lifting the slab enough for the engineer to pass safely. Ilara's heart raced, but she felt a calm reassurance knowing Kale's actions had saved the day. Once the team reached the supply hub, Kale guided them in reinforcing the ground around the fissure. He pointed to weak spots, demonstrating the safest ways to secure structures, while the humans worked in coordination. Tools and materials moved seamlessly, as if guided by an invisible force. Ilara watched him, impressed. "He's not just protecting us," she whispered to Ravi. "He's teaching us to be brave, precise, and careful, and we're learning faster than I imagined." By midday, the fissure had been stabilized, supplies were safe, and the colony could continue its operations. The humans were exhausted but relieved, and Kyle remained silently vigilant, ensuring that no one had been injured. Later, Ilara found herself walking alone near the edge of the crystal forest. Kale appeared beside her, as he always did, moving without a sound. She looked at him thoughtfully. "Kale," she said softly, "we've faced danger, fear, and uncertainty together. And yet, you've stayed. You've guided and protected us. Why?" Kyle tilted his head, his large eyes reflecting the twin suns. Slowly, he extended a hand and pressed it lightly to his chest. It was a gesture of trust, commitment, and understanding. Ilara smiled, understanding completely. Kale had chosen to stay not out of obligation, but because he respected humanity, their courage, empathy, and determination. The bond between them deepened over the following days. Humans began to trust Kale instinctively, following his silent guidance in both dangerous and routine tasks. Engineers learned to anticipate his gestures, adapting their movements to align with his directions. Children watched him carefully, learning patience and precision without a single word spoken. Ilara noticed another change. Kyle had started responding to her in subtle ways that seemed personal. A slight nod when she made the right decision, a gentle glow of his skin when she showed compassion, and a careful guiding touch when she needed support. Words were unnecessary. The connection was clear and undeniable. One afternoon, while supervising repairs near a crystal ridge, a minor landslide occurred. Rocks and debris tumbled toward the humans, who froze in fear. Kyle reacted instantly, positioning himself between the falling debris and the humans. With precise movements, he deflected rocks and guided the humans to safety. When the danger passed, a young recruit approached Kale nervously. I couldn't have done that without you," he said, voice trembling. Kale only tilted his head, then extended a hand in reassurance. The gesture conveyed confidence, patience, and encouragement, enough to make the recruit believe he could face challenges on his own next time. Ilara observed quietly, her heart swelling. She realized that Kale was teaching more than survival, skills. He was instilling courage, trust, and empathy, lessons that humans could carry far beyond Oralis. That evening, the colony gathered in the central square for a brief respite. Fires burned safely, casting warm light across the crystal landscape. Children laughed, adults shared stories of the day's successes, and Kale moved among them silently, ensuring everyone was safe and calm. Ilara walked alongside him, her eyes meeting his. "You've seen what humans are capable of," she said softly, "and yet, you continue to stay, guide, and protect. I think you admire us." Kyle's skin shimmered faintly, a subtle acknowledgement. No words were needed. The gesture conveyed understanding, respect, and perhaps a hint of admiration. Ilara felt a quiet warmth at the realization that this silent being had not only saved them, but had begun to value their spirit. Days later, a new challenge arose. A section of the colony's perimeter was threatened by shifting crystal formations. If left unchecked, it could collapse, endangering both humans and Lyrians. Ilara assembled a team, Kale included, to reinforce the area. Kale moved ahead, pointing and indicating where support structures should be placed. Humans followed his gestures, working in tandem with him. Ilara noticed the subtle ways he guided them, not by forcing, but by showing, encouraging, and demonstrating confidence. At one point, a large crystal began to fall toward a human worker. Kale reacted instantly, catching it with precise strength, preventing injury. The humans around him worked with renewed confidence, inspired by his actions. After the repairs were complete, Ilara approached Kale privately. "You've seen humans, at their best and worst," she said. "Yet you stay, you guide, you teach. I think you understand what it means to be human now." Kyle extended his hand, touching hers lightly. It was a gesture of affirmation, connection, and trust. Ilara felt the depth of their bond. Despite the silence between them, a conversation of the heart had formed, one built on courage, empathy, and mutual respect. The next morning, Ilara observed Kale interacting with a group of young recruits again. He demonstrated careful climbing, techniques using gestures and movements that taught without words. The children watched intently, imitating him eagerly. Ilara joined them, showing how human innovation could complement Kale's methods. Together, they demonstrated teamwork. Humans, suggesting tools, Kale guiding execution. The children learned faster than expected, their confidence growing with every success. By midday, the recruits were navigating the crystal forest confidently. Kyle gave a subtle nod of approval, his quiet pride evident. Ilara knew that their bond had become stronger than she had ever imagined, not just as humans and Lyrians, but as allies, friends, and guardians of their shared home. That evening, as twin moons rose over the colony, Ilara and Kale stood together on a ridge, overlooking the glowing settlement. Fires burned safely, humans and Lyrians worked together, and the crystal forest shimmered in the gentle light. "You've taught us so much," Ilara said softly, "about patience, courage, and trust. But I think we've taught you too." Kale's eyes glimmered faintly, and he touched her hand lightly. The message was clear. He had learned from humanity, just as they had learned from him. In the silence that followed, Ilara realized something profound. Words were not needed for true understanding. Actions, trust, and empathy could bridge any gap, even between species from different worlds. The bond between Ilara and Kale, and between humans and Lyrians, had grown stronger than any speech could express. They were united by shared experience, mutual respect, and a deep unspoken understanding. And though the world beyond Oralis remained unpredictable, the colony was ready. Together, humans and Lyrians could face any challenge, guided by courage, wisdom, and the silent strength of one extraordinary being. As the night deepened, Ilara looked at Kale and whispered softly, more to herself than anyone else, "We may not always understand each other fully, but I know we will face everything together." Kale tilted his head, and in that quiet gesture the promise was returned. No words were needed. They had become more than allies. They had become partners, guardians, and friends, ready to meet whatever the future held. The bond between species had deepened, lessons had been learned, and a silent promise had been made. They would never face the challenges alone. The colony on Oralis had become a thriving settlement, thanks to the cooperation of humans and Lyrians. Humans had brought innovation, courage, and determination, while Lyrians, led by Kale, had provided knowledge, precision, and insight. Yet the shadow of the Varkans still loomed, an alien species intent on claiming the planet and eliminating any resistance. Ilara stood on the command platform, her gaze sweeping across the horizon. The twin suns reflected off the crystal forests, making the landscape appear both beautiful and fragile. "They're coming," Ravi said quietly, pointing toward the distant dark shapes moving across the plains. "The Varkans won't wait any longer." Ilara took a deep breath. "Prepare the defenses. Kyle, I'll need you with me at the front lines. We'll coordinate the human and Lyrian forces together." Kyle nodded silently, Hissant's calm and steady. Humans had grown,